I think there's some validity to some of the scientific research that's going on out there about this idea of a simulation, but I also think that's really just a technological lens that we're using right now to understand our frame of reference on reality. Because if anybody out in the world tells you they know what the hell's going on, they're full of shit. I'll just tell you that right now. I don't care who it is, if it's president or leader or
Fauci,
Elon or anyone. Sorry. Nobody knows what's going on.
Thank you, Mitch Schultz, for joining me on my podcast today. The director of DMT, The Spirit Molecule, and many more movies, actually, documentaries, just educating people on the maybe benefits of certain things. What have you been up to, sir?
Well, gosh, what have I been up to? First off, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again and be able to come on and share some thoughts with you.
Yes, thank you.
I guess in general, I've been in the lab, I guess, so to speak. It's been a little over a decade now since we released The Spirit Molecule. And during the pandemic, my producer reached out and said, hey, it's been a decade. A lot has changed. What do you think about making a sequel? And so we chatted about that, and we spent some time conceptualizing a new piece. And we're in the process of kind of getting that. We've been building that for a little while, and then started production this year. So we started doing some interviews, and we're excited to. I don't know. I'm not giving a date on release yet or anything like that, but we are in the process of working on it, and we're calling it tentatively the Conscious Molecule.
Aha, nice. Yeah, that was such a hit and such a eye-opening movie. That and the title couldn't have been better. The Spirit Molecule, because it's like breaking it down to the tiniest molecule of where the spirit is. Is it? What is it? But so this the Conscious Molecule. And yeah, a lot has changed 10 years. Tell me, can you enlighten me on what's changed?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that the title, obviously, I was based on Dr. Strassman's book, and he did a really nice job, I think, of being able to kind of get a sense of maybe, just the beginnings of what's going on. So being able to tie it into this next one and the Conscious Molecule, what kept coming back to me, and not only my experiences, but just life and my general curiosity of the world, and what DMT and other psychedelics had pointed me towards was consciousness. And that's this big kind of elusive idea that we don't even know scientifically what is going on. We don't even have a sense of how do we know that we are ourselves. How do all these sensorium that we call the environment in our five senses play into giving us this sense of awareness and being able to kind of move through and navigate this unknown world? Yeah. So that's what came back to me.
Conscious. Yeah. When I was in college, I remember I was super like partying, and not in a good way, like not like with psychedelics, and I'm like expanding consciousness. I was doing like powders, and I mixed LSD and mushrooms and like weird things you're not supposed to mix. But I do remember I put this big message on my wall. It was like expanded the whole wall, and it just said enlightenment. I knew there was like something more. I did not feel like fully awake, like my shirt. And I think through the use over the years, a proper use of psychedelics, mushrooms, DMT, I feel like I am way more awake than I was, for sure. And I attribute that to some of these experiences.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would agree with you. It's if it wasn't for these substances, and I don't claim that these are the be all end all for everything, but in many ways, if it wasn't for being able to explore my consciousness in those ways, that I wouldn't be here. It gave me a broader perspective of myself, gave me a broader perspective of the entire world and the universe and those around me. The connections amongst all of those things that every word that we say, every action that we take, all of those things have impact, and they play out in ways that are extremely dynamic. It's not just on the individual maybe that you're having a discussion with, but can then resonate out way beyond that. And we, at least from my perspective and what I've come to, is that we're not just perceiving this exterior world, we're also generating that exterior world. And so we are creating this reality. And the more awareness that we have of ourselves and the wider and broader world and the connections between those, that can really change our reality. That's the bottom line. We don't need all these wars. We don't need these economic collapses. We have the technology to feed people and change the world that I know a lot of people out there want to see. So
yeah, but except the billionaires or multi-trillionaires that are just like toying with us. And like, I feel like it's an experiment. I heard that recently on a podcast, and that, what was it? The movie with Eddie Murphy, and it's like Trading Places, where these two billionaires playing with these guys, Dan Aykroyd, lives. And I feel like something is not jiving with the story that we're getting from the mainstream media, you know?
Well, so the way I like to look at that, for one, I think that humanity in general needs a new story. We need a story that we can all kind of rally behind, because the stories that have been propagated through history, through human history, they're outdated in many ways. They can't handle the complexity of where we are now, and the information exchange playing and technology development playing a huge role in how that stuff is disseminated. Those stories no longer, and I don't want to say they're not valid, but they don't have the same control / resonance that they used to.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of times too, I know it is easy to kind of look out and see the billionaire class doing a lot of things, and might be easy to point fingers and, oh, it's the politicians, and I get a lot of that, and I also don't like to give those entities as much power as I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists tend to give those. I don't think that there's as much forethought in what they're doing to actually say, I'm going to control the masses. I think that they're operating off of what they think is best. Now, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of that, but I do think that everybody in this world is coming to the table with what they've learned in life and what their environment has told them. So whatever their life conditions are, that's how they see the world. That's how they interact with the world. They see it either as, is it a struggle? Is it a fight? Somebody out to get me? Or do I need to change myself to go kind of fit in with a group? And so I tend not to put as much power on or to those
like malicious intent. Right. You know, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing their best, and I like that. That's very optimistic. I can't like completely disagree with that, because I don't know. We're just like looking at what's happening and saying like, is this even real? Like, you know, are we in a simulation? Is this a joke?
Yeah. And the simulation theory, it's a fun one to bring up, because that tends to, and I think it's fallen into this, it's been a big question of a lot of people. It just seems like a simulation. I think there's some validity to some of the scientific research that's going on out there about this idea of a simulation, but I also think that's really just a technological lens that we're using right now to understand our frame of reference on reality. Because if anybody out in the world tells you they know what the hell's going on, they're full of shit. I'll just tell you that right now. I don't care who it is, if it's president or leader or Elon or anyone. Nobody knows what's going on. And we're just scratching the surface of being able to kind of really understand, particularly on relativity to quantum mechanics, that this is a purely informational, just possibilities, and it's really about where we look and how we perceive that is bringing it into existence, is my take.
I've been meditating a lot, and so like what I was gonna try to say there is like what we perceive from the outside, is one thing, but we're not necessarily looking in. Most of us I think, because even me, up until like December of this past year, I just started meditating like every day, like this transcendental meditation a lot. And it's not even, it's kind of weird because I don't really think that much. I just go like black, but I'm feeling myself, and I'm kind of just, I feel like I'm charging up is what I liken it to, because I'm getting these weird pulses, and I think that they're tied to the source of life somehow, cosmically or whatever, metaphysically, because I'm getting better and better, where I can just, like, I don't have to do it for 20 minutes. I can do it for like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and kind of charge up, and I'm much more pleasant. Because this shit,
it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I'm all like wound up and like, fuck, all this shit coming at me from all these directions.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it though too. And I think that's a big part of meditation is not thinking, right? That is one of the most amazing things about humans, is this ability to think and think about thinking and think about thinking and thinking all the way down. At the same time, we are so highly structured to think that with all this information overload and getting pulled a million different directions from social media or the news or politics or economy, it's best to turn off that thinking mind. And whenever we can do that, we do kind of, I think, reconnect to source, and it does reinvigorate us. So good on you. I haven't been as good as meditator as I should have been, or should be. So thanks for the inspiration.
Yeah, it's not too late. I mean, we're a similar age-ish. I think you're like a slight generation, half generation older, but
25 maybe.
Yeah, at heart. And so there's so many forms of meditation. Like you could be running, and then. But, well, I recommend transcendental meditation, like just to anyone out there. I know a guy, John Dewey, here in Woodland Park. He trained me. He was trained by the dude that was trained by the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And he's like, all I ever wanted to do was be. And he just likes to be. He's a interesting dude. I don't give him enough credit. I should actually thank him for the impact. Because you think you know how to meditate, but then they kind of give you... They really break it down. You got an app. Now you get an app. Sorry, I'm not promoting TM, but it is really cool. Great. It is, and you can tell by the person who's teaching you or whatever, like, if I want to look like he's like 80, his skin looked fresh as a daisy, and he was smiling and laughing, and you want to, want some bitter old dude teaching you, because then it's like,
No, but you get that sense when somebody is really there and really able to touch and perceive and just be, like you said, just be, right? Yeah. And it shows across and it shines out from them, and people can tell without even having a conversation with someone, I think. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's weird, because like we all sort of maybe seek that level of enlightenment. But then you have people that go to gurus and then they kind of follow them. To me, that's a little bit strange. But I follow people, I guess, like Joe Rogan or whatever. These people, these podcasters. I'm not your guru, Anthony Robbins. What are you trying to do?
I think it's great to look for examples in the world that can influence you and that inspire you, and that inspire you to maybe look at a broader sense of yourself and change. I poke around so many different places. I have a hard time with anybody that calls themselves a guru, or again, since they know the answer. I tend to run the other way when I hear that. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like to tune in and listen to people that I think are, onto something that is next level. A lot of times where my interest has been, I would say, is more in the philosophical realms. And again, trying to kind of, philosophy kind of gets shoved to the side in the scientific community. And
I love philosophy.
Yeah,
I love it.
But there's just so much of philosophy that has really laid groundwork for how we even, in many ways, if it wasn't for philosophy, we wouldn't even have science.
Yeah. Asking questions, right?
Being able to ask those questions and being able to say, well, how can we go measure something, and how do we measure that? And now when we're starting to have, in the more modern age, experiments from science that are telling us that reality is not as you think, we need new philosophies to be able to start expanding that horizon, so to speak, on what it could be. So
yeah, it's asking different questions, and I guess philosophizing, like Socrates. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I love Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you're
love Joseph Campbell, one of my best. And that gets back to, I'm a storyteller, so him being able to kind of lay out those connections amongst all humans just resonated with me, and still does to this day. Marshall McLuhan is another person that really has laid some good groundwork, at least in my thoughts, I think, on how technological development impacts us and how
I forgot I can re-listen to
Marshall
this.
McLuhan, he was way ahead of his time. Even kind of predicting the internet back in the 50s. Just an amazing person, to sometimes hard to listen to. As far as his conceptual formulations are challenging, and it'd be times where I'm like, I need to go back and reread that whole chapter. But again, it's so deep and rich and can offer us. And his idea of technology is not just our cell phones or computers, but he would even go as far to say language. Language is a human technology that we have been using. Fire, spears, and that technological development on how that information is exchanged was really kind of where he was looking. How quick is it going to go from a printed message where most people in the world can't read to ratcheting up to where you have a huge increase in literacy.
Okay.
From that to printed newspapers every day, then to radio, television, and now the internet. And then just imagine what VR and augmented reality do to our perception of consciousness and the environment around us. We don't quite know yet. We're just at the beginnings of that, but that should be adding some extra layers of awareness, I think. So
I'm thinking of like what was the last thing you said?
I'd say that's where I put a lot of my time, is I guess kind of more into the philosophical nature of things, where it's a little more, things are a little more loose as opposed to locked down. Right.
Would you plug in, to like a matrix?
Well, I guess the way I like to look at that, I think it's inevitable that technology is developing and that it is cross-pollinating with our physical biological system. I think that is going to be part of our future. I think there's a lot of things that we need to be cautious of course, and consider as we're developing this stuff. But I think we already live in a singularity. The way most people describe, let's just take technology, for instance, we look at it as outside of us. We look at it as artificial. We call it artificial intelligence. It's inanimate. At the same time, that has been dreamed up and conceptualized in the human mind. We are nature, using natural products to create new extensions and ways of sensing the world. And I think that we're not going towards a singularity where there's going to be this event where we just wake up and we're part of the machine. I think we already live in the singularity. The entire universe is a singularity. It's referencing itself back and forth and learning about itself. And that's part of us doing what we do with technology.
Yeah, I saw these kids playing recently for hours on end, and just like looking and like learning and like what's this, what's that, and like I don't know, that made me like, it's like a little robot like learning its environment, and and then it's gonna live its life or whatever. But I don't, the plug-in thing was about like energy.
Like the Neuralink.
Well, both. I mean, well, I was thinking Neuralink earlier. I said something about that, but just like a charger, some kind of battery. You could live forever, probably, because I don't know how else we would live forever. Maybe, and you might not want to live forever, But
well, that was my question. Is like, quite honestly, do we want to? I think it's fascinating that we've been able to start extending our lives longer and longer. But the idea of immortality, I mean, to me, death is actually really more life. The idea and the concept of death, and I don't get into the heaven and hell realm, but I think that there is this continuance of the universe, this singularity. And if matter or energy doesn't cease to exist, then spirit, whatever you want to call it, soul, we fall back into the oneness, and I don't think we cease to exist. So
this is good.
We already live forever. It's just a matter of how we perceive it.
This is a perfect segue because I've done DMT, and I took the 3 hits, but out of like a bong, and just like blasted off and saw the gestures. Like my thing, because I want you to tell me one of your wildest experiences, but also this kind of gave me a sense that life does exist outside of the body, because I saw myself leave the top of my head and I went through some like weird portal. I wish I could draw it or have it made, but it was like all these things, and like all these like cubes are opening, and I'm going through it, and then I pop in on this. It's like a glass house, and everything is glass and white or whatever, and these 2 jesters are just sipping tea, and it might have been more than 2, but one of them looks over at me and he goes, "Shh," and then from that, it was like telegraphed or whatever to me that we got this under control. You don't need to be here. We exist. It's here, but go back to your realm, and take care of that dimension. That's where you're supposed to be. And but it opened my eyes to like, I don't know, just that life could exist, or consciousness could exist outside of the body.
Yes. And I've had a lot of those experiences. I think a couple interesting distinctions. We're talking about DMT and NDMT, which we did the first film on, and Dr. Strassman did his research on. That experience that people have described, that very common experience, mind you.
Weird
just very fascinating to me that's the case. But you go into this fractal, ever-changing, super fast information scape, and to me that is like it's the pure information building blocks that are out there that make up what we perceive as this 3-dimensional body, and there's intelligence behind that, or consciousness or awareness, and even other entities, if you want to call them that are living at different iterations of the makeup of all of this. And then on the flip side of that, 5-MeO, another very simple molecule, but slightly different, causes or brings about unitive experiences where you're not getting the bright fractal colors, but you are in kind of a void, or at least how many of my experiences are in this void, but you are literally connected to everything, breathing in and out, all existence, except you're not seeing the information scape. You're in that kind of singularity. So I guess to jump to, you were asking about one of my craziest experiences. There's probably too many to mention here, but one that sticks out to me particularly was about, it was almost a decade to my very first DMT experience. The film had come out, and sitting with a friend, and my first DMT experience was in 2002.
Oh, wow.
This was in 2012. And I hit the DMT, and almost instantly I popped back into the same exact, this isn't the bright fractal crazy world. I popped into the same apartment I was in New York City when I smoked DMT for the first time.
Weird.
And I looked around and I'm seeing the other 5 people that are with me, the lamps, everything. And then from that split second of like that recognition of like, oh my gosh, I'm back in New York City the first time I smoked DMT. I lived 10 years of my life because it showed me this is what happened. You decided to make a movie, and then it dropped me. It took 30 minutes. It was a 30-minute experience, and then dropped me back into my current location where I was with my friend. And it basically showed me this experience right here equated to all of this. And I lived those 2 years in 30 minutes.
Nice.
And that was one of the most mind-bending experiences. It wasn't just the crazy chaos of all the different information and things shifting around, but I had a very real sense that there was a connection from that experience that I could have a conscious awareness of, and then live the last 10 years of my life in complete flash frames, obviously extremely fast, but they weren't that kind of
wow
escape.
Trippy. I mean, well, and I mean, I'm 2 people. I feel like maybe people's lives have been changed by psychedelics, like Steve Jobs and Aubrey Marcus. He talked about like, his experience and how it helped him, I think somehow or another, develop the On It company. And and with me, I guess I don't know, whether I did them very carelessly when I was young, and remember seeing like cool shit, but never. You want that growth now. You want I don't want to just see fucking wild colors and stuff,
right?
Or the walls breathe. I want introspection, growth, enlightenment, as I was saying earlier.
And that's a big part of that set and setting, right? That we get out of an experience, what kind of care and thought we put into it ahead of time, and what sort of situation that we put ourselves in. And I was the same way early on. It was reckless. I was partying. I wasn't really thinking much about it.
Yeah.
Thank God I was able to have some experiences in my younger days where I was like, there's something else here that was pretty amazing, and was able to touch some of those places. But it wasn't until my late 20s, and then even again in my early 30s, where it was more about sitting, the meditation, having that broader conscious awareness. And I will say DMT was the direct result. But my first DMT experience was a direct result of that movie being made and where we are today. One of the first things I remember consciously thinking when I came back from that very first experience in New York was, why isn't anyone talking about this? And I have to make a movie. And that was like, let's go.
Hell yeah.
It was really Terrence McKenna out, and then Joe had talked a little about it on some of his early shows. And I was like, we have to get out there and be able to explain this, or at least have a discussion about it, because this is a naturally occurring compound that causes very repeatable experiences, not just for this one individual, but for many individuals that look very similar. And if we don't, it's still strange to me that most of science isn't looking at this right now, because
it's fascinating. It's like life altering,
right?
To see the other side without having to die, and it's repeatable and convincing as fuck. Like, it's all really like time slowed down. I was like, we took it, and then it's like we were listening to music, and then this music was like, and it stopped, and I was in like this tube, and I had never heard about the Joe Rogan's talking about like the jester like shot him the bird. When I heard that after I had my experience, and both of the jesters, I was like, that's weird. His is like with the finger up, and mine was a finger up, but it was like this. I don't think I'm misremembering. It was pretty vivid, but that I don't know. I wanted to say this based on what you said like a couple seconds ago, which was like sitting. You're not like at a party and fucking at a
right
concert. You're like maybe in the dark. I don't know. I go sometimes in the dark with a couple of grams of psilocybin, and it's so weird, like the transition. It's like, but it's like it's well, for me, it's almost like repeatable, or like there's these weird, like, it feels like pipes flushing, spaghetti, little weird sexual things, like weird, like vaginas, like going like weird. But anyways, and then you're in the thing. Then you're kind of like tripping a little,
Yeah.
But do you have what's your practice and experience?
Well,
with that?
I think you nailed it. I tend to, in my experience, because I don't like being out in public anymore, period, on them.
Right.
If and when I do them, there's very selective times, and I'm usually kind of sensing the environment. Okay, it's time for a little reminder, so to speak, or meditation. But I think doing it in the dark, or at least a low light situation, so minimizing as much as you can your external factors that are playing a role and pulling or vying for your attention, and that can be a light where your eyes are like, oh, what's that? But if you minimize those and close your eyes, have all of your things kind of where you need them, you're not going to be interrupted at the door, your phone's not going to go off, with some, I tend to like music that doesn't have
Words.
A lot of words, if any at all, and just let the music, very spacious, just kind of take it. And it almost kind of is like a cleansing almost, not just on my consciousness, but a lot of times it feels like my entire physical body and even nervous system. So traditionally, I think that's the way a lot of, ayahuasca, for instance, it's always done in the dark. Want to have a lot of other external influences kind of, again, vying for your attention.
That makes me think of like real life, like in controlling. What's that?
IRL, right? In real life.
Yeah, exactly. Bobby, IRL. And, controlling your environment, that we don't really think about that when we're in real life. You're allowing chaos into your environment with the news or with these toxic people, or name whatever thing it might be in your environment that's not harmoniously kind of flowing with you. I just thought of that. We're having a conversation. I don't really think too much.
No, but you're right. We don't take that thought process into our daily lives, right? We might do that for a meditation or a psychedelic experience, but imagine all the influences, and we get pulled, not just pulled in a direction, but our emotions are getting triggered on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Whether it's a news article that pops up and you're like, oh, goddamn that politician, or, fuck that guy, or whatever it might be. Those small little things actually affect every aspect of our daily lives. They impact. If you might have a bad conversation with somebody at work, and then you go home, and then your partner takes that on, and then the kids feel it, and then it's this ripple effect. And if we can take a little bit more time and effort to think about what we have around us at all times, our environment, and it's not about controlling that environment, it's about being able to kind of set up a resonance that works well for us to be the most thoughtful, caring, empathetic, efficient, even if you want to look at it that way. I think it would benefit all of us for that.
Yeah, they say, like, you got to fill your cup and take care of yourself so that you can take care of others, and give yourself a reprieve. I've been doing it more lately with the meditation, and thankfully my wife has been really just like supportive, or and she'll just, because it's like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if I'm like whatever. And we've been having a lot of visitors, and it's just like a lot of stimuli and visiting, and it's just like talking, and I need to go and charge up, and that's kind of like a way I'm kind of like controlling my environment. And people say that you should do that, but how do you do that? Well, that's how I do that. How do you do that, Mitch?
Well, I've been learning slowly. It's not an easy thing. I think one of the most recognizable things that I have noticed, I consume a lot of news, scientific research, just articles. So I've got my feed, and I'm not I'm on social media, but I don't use social media like people do. So I have my news feed. So I will notice that just scrolling through and even reading headlines, all of a sudden, little things like that. And then it affects my day. You know, it affects how I'm talking to somebody else, how happy I might feel that day. And so that's a pretty obvious one. So there are times where I'm just like, all right, put the phone down, stop reading the news, or just step away from that.
Yeah, I'll get up, and every now and then I'll come up, like in the morning, I'll have like a fresh idea. Oh, I got this tweet. Let me tweet it out. But then I see another tweet from someone else, and that will pique my interest, but it's not, I don't get mad until I see someone else's comment, and I'm like, you fucking rich. You're an idiot. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, and trying to find the compassion for those folks too. That's the hard part, right? It's because again, I do think that we're all, even if somebody is trolling, you know, and just being an asshole to be an asshole, the reason they're doing that is because that's all they know. That's all they know how to do. That's what that's what the world has taught them. And we can choose to engage in that. And if we engage in it, then it's going to probably get worse.
You get lost in it.
Or we can choose to just walk the other way, and we don't have to. And that can open up. So I guess to answer that question, it's not just the news feed, but like, again, just being aware of what are the things in my life that are around and how they're influencing me on a daily basis. And you know, psychedelics teaches you how to do that. If you become more aware of yourself, you can start to see where your triggers are. Why am I responding to this politician this way, or why am I responding to my partner this way? Whatever it might be, there are these little things that we can start to have some awareness to, and if we can kind of mediate those, step aside when we need to, not engage. If there's a barrier in front of me, instead of trying to knock it down, which has been my MO, you know, growing up early in life, maybe I can walk around it as opposed to just breaking it down.
Yeah.
And some of this is just, it's an ongoing process. I am by no means perfect, and it's a constant kind of back and forth. Good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear. I mean, in a way, because it's comforting, because like I had fucking like the 2 bad weeks, and it was like my own mental torment that was like of something you don't have control over type thing, and you're just like,
that's it right there.
Yeah.
Whatever we don't have that control over, and the only thing we really have control over is our reaction to a situation.
Yes. Yeah, because I was triggered, as the kids say, but it like would not go away for like 2 weeks, and finally I came to some weird, I think I chilled on the weed a little bit, because I was like, that can sometimes over amplify paranoia.
Absolutely. It absolutely can.
Yeah.
You know?
So
and when you start to feel that paranoia,
excuse
me, I always recommend people step away, because that can develop later, even for long-term users of cannabis. If you start to have those, it's probably good to step away for a little while.
Good.
It is. Yeah.
See, listen to Mitch, people. I need to. I have been, but I also, when I say step away, I mean I'm just not smoking like constantly. I'm just like little, just for whatever, like microdosing almost, if you will, of weed. Yeah. Which
sitting down and smoking a whole blunt, just hit 1 or 2 off the vape.
yeah. Like, and I did that with. I used to take Adderall, which a lot of the people take it, and it's quite effective, but I think you can become addicted to it, because it's really stimulates you, and you feel good, and you get like, tell me what. Yeah.
It just charges your entire nervous system, right? So it's heightened at all times, and it can be very effective. And I started with ADHD myself, and so I know it can be effective. At the same time, it can be detrimental if you're not careful. It's really about any of these medicines, nicotine, I don't know, keep nicotine out of there, cannabis, psychedelics, Adderall. It's how they're used, whether it becomes a medicine, whether it becomes a poison, right? And
I would think I was poisoning myself because I was doing it like every day for 3 years, I think, in like just, the full dose or whatever. And my body started showing signs of like breaking down and shit. And I'm just
absolutely.
like, I had to, because you're redlining your adrenal glands and whatever is happening. It's not okay to do long term. It's not sustainable, I don't think.
Right.
And so I had to like sort of break free, and I started titrating down type thing.
Yep.
And my brother Matt, who you're familiar with, he was instrumental in helping me just kind of like be like, you're acting like a fucking psycho when you're on this shit, like you're not all there. And so that and like sort of tough loving me into stopping that. So I titrated down and basically just stopped. And I think that's, it's not easy to just quit chemically shit that you've been taking.
Well, it is also that thing. I noticed it with myself in many different circumstances with quote unquote medicines or whatever, but we don't act the same way if it is getting abused, and we can be a little more aggressive. We don't even realize it. We're just like, but it's that little snap or how you say that word. And everybody else is like, whoa, what's going on here? And I also think that I have a history of a lot of trauma, and it's been working through that. So it's that stacked and compounding trauma. But then when you start throwing substances in on that, and particularly when you're talking about Adderall or speed, that ratchets that tension up in the body and in the mind and within the post-traumatic stress. And all those little things start popping off, right? Without even us being fully aware.
Interesting. Life is a trip. Because I feel like I had like some trauma, and I guess we could all maybe not all, whatever, find something. But with being in Iraq, and they make you work these fucking insane 24-hour shifts, and then you're talk about being like fried to your nervous system or whatever, and then you try to go to sleep. Right. And this was my experiences. You go to sleep, you go lay down, finally you can lay down, but you're so wired up, like it's hard to fall asleep, but you're like, at least I'm in bed. And then they fucking come and they knock again, and they're like, we got more work to do. And you're like, fuck. Yeah. I remember that moment, like to this day, it's like electrified. I was like so like pissed or whatever, just fried, that for a decade I couldn't sleep, and like a knock on the door would like freak me out and shit. But I'm pretty good, and I'm finally sleeping
good.
Yeah, like getting 8 hours. Like it might take me, I might get up a few times a night, but then I actually have been getting 8 hours, which is insane. How is your sleep?
I'm the same way. Like I've struggled with sleep my entire life. Looking back at my life and the traumas and stuff, I know those have played a huge role in that. I think it's also part of my naturally curious mind. It's just sometimes it's just hard to shut it off. My mind's constantly like, oh, what about this? What about this? But we know, and science proves again and again, that sleep is a very, very important and critical part of our well-being, right?
Yeah.
And particularly if you're using any sort of substances, because at night your brain is literally dumping the toxins that you've been feeding it throughout the day. And if you're not sleeping and going through a normal, at least 6 hours, but 8 hours of sleep, you're not getting that stuff out of your body. And again, that stuff starts to compound, and then it makes it harder to sleep, and then it's even more trauma. And so it just continues to build and spiral. And so if we can allow ourselves that, and again, I'm not perfect in this regard, but it is getting better as time is going on, where I can say, okay, it's time to lay down. Let's not have the computer screen open in bed while you're trying to go to sleep, or even thinking about it before. It's really putting that stuff away, because that also helps keep you awake and get your mind running in different directions. But sleep is important. Sleep is extremely important, not just for athletes for recovery, but every one of us to be able to function on a level that we would call quote unquote normal, or at least have sort of normalcy to. Yeah.
Healthy. Yeah. Man, sleep. Yeah. I mean, because I feel like I was not getting it to the point where I was like, I had to go to get hypnotized. And that kind of helped a little bit. I think what's been really helping is the meditating, and what I'll do, a couple things. Two are not so good. One is good. So I'll smoke like half a cigarette.
Okay.
Take like whatever. And then I'll take like 2 hits or 3 hits from some indica, which those are the bad things. Probably I could probably take them out. But that's like, you're going to bed. I'm telling my body because I don't smoke during the day, like a cigarette or whatever. But at night I do, and to go to bed. Anyways, but then I've just added this in, and I think this has been helping the most. Is I'll go sit down and I act like I'm going to meditate. I do the meditation, breathing, just slow everything down, but just for like 2 minutes. Because if you do it for too long, it can like wake you up or whatever. So I'm just slowing the body down in a chair. So I try to do it laying down and it doesn't work. Anyways, but yeah, I typically will smoke a bowl, and I was talking to this other dude, Saint Yeti, yesterday, or on the last podcast, sorry, and he was saying your body, like you were kind of just saying about how it's dumping when you're sleeping, your body's trying to find homeostasis, I guess, when you're sleeping. And so I don't know that I'm really getting proper sleep. Do you have like a sleep ritual?
I mean, I'm just thinking about the cannabis side of this thing. And I don't know if a lot of people have said this in the past, and I found it to be the case, but it's a dream stealer.
Yes.
Right. So you don't dream, you might dream, but it may not be. And whenever I take cannabis out of my daily diet, oh my gosh, my dreams are, through the roof, and extra high def, and different, very memorable, very real in a lot of ways. And I think what's kind of going on there, and I don't smoke as much as I used to, but it does your mind, I think, also during sleep is processing story, right? It's processing what you went through during the day. It's not just about dumping these toxins, but it's literally generating what happened today. Where does this need to fit? How does this memory fit with this memory? And stack experience. And so the next day when you're waking up, that stuff is kind of encoded or defragged into your hard drive. And then it's going to affect how you go forward. So
yes,
I found when I'm smoking a lot of cannabis and I'm not dreaming, I don't feel like I'm getting the same sort of story cohesion, so to speak, on what needs to be kind of fitting into place. And so that I do. If I'm going to smoke, I try not to smoke right before bed, is one way to do it. But I also know that has helped me in the past, just being able to kind of shut down the mind a little bit. But I do find more benefit out of being able to dream a little more regularly than not have it at all. I'd wake up and I was a cannabis smoker from the time I woke up until I was going to bed at night. And that's, now for a while, I might not smoke for a week, and then so it's still there, but it's not that kind of like 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day kind of approach. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to just a reasonable level, and it's definitely better. Like the old days of smoking blunts and stuff, like that was just stupid, probably, but whatever. Now I have my little one hitter, my little, you put like a tiny little bowl in there and keep it. You can because you want to, it's almost like medicine, if you will. You're taking a dose, and you can measure it out this way instead of just like blunts, and that's insane.
I try not to look back at my bad habits that were past behavior and apply a negative connotation to them, because then it keeps feeding that story in your head. And so look at it more as this is a learning experience. I may want to change something in the future. And so it's not necessarily, it's a bad thing. May not have been the most healthy, but that's about getting a broader perspective of yourself and being able to learn from that. And another kind of just quick note on that, I had had a crazy trauma when I was 19. Actually, I just moved to Colorado, freshman in college. And within the first month of classes, I got jumped by 5 guys.
Oh, no.
I'm a pretty big guy. These guys were my size and bigger. So I got my ass kicked, handed to me. And it was a pretty rough beating. Ended up in the hospital, and then had seizures that had developed after that. But I bring this up in the point because I never processed that experience. I knew that, I've done a lot of work with psychedelics and ayahuasca, ibogaine, and any number of things to really get back to all these other traumas that I've had in my past. But I knew that there was something there that I couldn't quite unravel. And I couldn't, it's kind of like this elusive thing. I'd look this way and no, not there. And, but I do feel that a lot of my cannabis use had blocked me from being able to fully go back and process that beating.
Interesting.
And last year I had a psilocybin experience that took me straight back to that experience. And for 4 hours, I relived it. I wasn't tripping. I was having full memory of getting my ass kicked. And so I just was swaying and swinging and yelling, and was able to actually process that.
Wow.
But I do know, or at least, looking back at all that now, I feel like my cannabis use was a big part of kind of keeping that at bay. In some ways it was probably necessary because it was so intense and it was such an intense experience. And it needed time to kind of process.
You weren't ready to process.
I wasn't ready, but it also pushed down a lot of the ability to even perceive that. So
grow past it and stuff. We're coming up on time, but we still have a few minutes. So when I take mushrooms, I'll always, you take it and you sit there for like 20, 30, 45 minutes, whatever. And then you take a bowl because that kicks it in. And I've always done it that way. I've never not done it that way. So I like cannabis with my psychedelics. It tends to kind of, for me anyways, kind of round the edges off a little bit. So you kind of settle into it. Yeah.
And what I've done over the last probably 6-7 years, I've experimented with compounding different substances. So I'm not just taking, mushrooms and cannabis, for instance. It would be like, all right, well, let's work with MDMA and then a dissociative, and these aren't like huge doses. It's trying to find that magic space. But I really like combining compounds these days because you can get into some very, very interesting places, where telepathy opens up, or sometimes you don't have to say a word and everything's just like pop, 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 pop. And you're like, aha.
I understand.
Yeah. So it's not every day that I'm having to do these either. That's the other thing. It's like there are.
How often?
Breaks and training. It varies.
Ideally.
I was just thinking about this the other day a lot. Actually, when I was in the process of making the first Spirit Molecule film from about 2007 until about 2011, once a month I was having, I'd lock down on a weekend and I would just do a meditation with psychedelics. And I found that I was in my best mental health. Now, I don't think that once a month is, ideal necessarily, but
I was kind of I'm feeling that. I was kind of on that.
Because I also treat it as church or touching the divine. And it wasn't just about the meditation. It's also about kind of tuning into the universe. And that can do so much for our day-to-day life. I mean, I was working out regularly. I was happier. I didn't have a problem waking up or sleeping. And so because I've been trying to kind of recalibrate myself, getting closer to 50, and like, where am I going here? And what's, how is my body responding in my mind and these past experiences? How do I kind of get back to that? So I don't know what it has been the last few years. It feels like, I'll go through a stint where, for a couple months, I'm having some regular experiences and then I won't touch them for 6 months,
Okay. Yeah.
It's just kind of whenever the calling comes in, I don't feel like I have to force it or, it's got to be this much or this little. It's just kind of being able to tune into myself and what's going on in the world and personally in myself, that I might need something like that.
Yeah, I was on that same like regimen on a monthly thing, and that was working. And then, but at some point, I just was like, I'm good. And like you said, 6 months go by or whatever, and then now it's like it's been a while. Let me check in, see what's happening.
What's happening out there?
Yeah, I mean, and then you have some people who are kind of like on the psychedelic, and we won't talk shit too much, but anyways, it's like the psychedelic kind of like train, if you will, like talking about the promoting it or something a lot, but they don't even do it, which is weird. That's interesting to me. Like,
yeah, I mean, it depends on kind of where they're coming from. I think a lot of times, I mean, if they're promoting it, or at least talking about the benefits of it, because I think the only reason to take psychedelics at this point in my life is for life-affirming experiences. It's not about getting high. It's not being able to learn about myself. But if there's somebody out there that doesn't do it, I would imagine they probably at least tried it.
Yeah, I think that's more of a thing. Yeah, they've done it, and that's even... Yeah, that's good. I
respect that. People, look, what's the old saying? It's like, once you get the message, you can hang up the phone. You don't have to keep going back.
Nice.
And for some people, that works great. Some people might need a little more of that as a regularity to keep themselves at where they want to be. But
then there's people that maybe do too much.
Absolutely. There's a point where it's like people are just chasing it. It's like, oh, I saw the crazy blue spaghetti, whatever. And it's about trying to always top that experience or get back to that experience. And I think that's where it becomes an issue for self. It should be more about, understanding self in a bigger and broader way.
Yeah, I'm loving how it's all like the education has become more available on how to properly learn and use these medicines. You're one of the main influences in the world that's pushing this, and I'm very excited to hear about the sequel. I mean, like sometimes the sequel is going to suck, but this one, because there's just so much more information. Like that one will look primitive compared to this one, I'm sure. Yeah.
I will, and hopefully not just being pompous, but I've seen this next film. It's going to blow the spirit molecule out of the water. It's going to be next level, and it's not just the look and the feel of it, but the story itself. We're going to be looking at the DMT experience, both 5-MeO and NMDMT, but really expanding upon what does this tell us about consciousness, not just within humans, but across the entire universe. And I think we started out like humans need a new story right now. Yeah. I'm not saying I have the story, but I think I have an idea about where we could start to look, and consciousness seems to be that place for me. So.
I love it. I'm so excited. I'm so happy and grateful to have had this hour with you. It's great catching up.
Yes.
We'll have to get together again soon, but I really appreciate it.
Get to Colorado.
Yeah. Well, and where did you graduate? Did you graduate in Colorado?
No, my brother did. I did go to school up there for a little while. I went to UT Austin for my undergrad, and then graduate school in New York. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I've lived in Colorado, and Colorado's been part of my life for years. I started going up there when I was 5, and love that place.
Well, if you're ever here, hit me up. I think you got my number.
Got it.
All right, brother. Well, we're out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't drop out. Just kidding. All right. We'll see you later.
Thanks, all.